So the EWG list is updated every year. In the clip, they were talking about the 2013 list. There's a little movement year to year. One thing I think people don't realize is that the data that EWG uses to develop these lists is actually government data. It's USDA data, random samples. And this year's list, I think there were about 32,000 samples that were tested for a suite of pesticides. And so EWG basically wants to try to make sense. As you can imagine, that's a lot of data. So EWG wants to make sense of that for the consumer. And the focus has always been on the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, but there's actually a full list. So about 48 to 50 individual produce items that are on the list. You can actually go back to the original data if you're so interested. For the environmental health nerds in the audience, if you want to actually look at the data, you can. But it's the way you can use a list like this is really for those who don't have the luxury of going all organic and you're concerned about these things. What EWG is suggesting, and I think it's a good strategy, is you can use it to sort of guide where to spend your dollars. So the Dirty Dozen list, these are, statistically speaking, these are individual produce items that have higher residues. So if you're going to go organic, and it is a cost premium to you that matters, then you might think about going organic for the produce items that are on the Dirty Dozen list, okay? And the good news is that there is a Clean 15 list where, I think avocados were the cleanest on the list. Only 1% had detectable levels of pesticides, only 11% of pineapples, and only 5.5% of the pesticides on the Clean 15 list had 2 or more pesticides. So in creating these lists, they both look at levels and number of detects. So there's some good news out there. And then on the Dirty Dozen list, every sample of imported nectarine tested positive for at least one pesticide. 99% of apples tested positive. There were individual samples of celery and cherry tomatoes that showed more than 10 different pesticides. So once again, if you're thinking about going organic, maybe you start with this list. EWG tries to make it easy for everyone. You can carry it around as a wallet card. There's an app for that, which you can download for free. But it's really just one tool, and it's a very complicated data set, a complicated issue, but it's just giving consumers that tool to think about. I mean, it's also about transparency, just knowing what the data show, but it's just one tool that a consumer could use.